सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया. That's it. But listen though.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा. इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
I'm with Shahidul Haque, the Bangabandhu Chair at Delhi University, teaching political science and international relations, and Bangladesh's former foreign secretary from 2013 to 2019, and Pankaj Saran, India's former deputy national security advisor, former high commissioner to Bangladesh in 2015 when the land boundary agreement between India and Bangladesh was signed, also a former ambassador to Russia, and served in various other nations. And today, of course, we're discussing the visit of the Bangladesh Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina. She is still in India. She is at Ajmer Sharif, paying her respects at the shrine of Muhyiddin Chishti. But she has had a very interesting 4-day visit right here in Delhi. And to discuss all this, first of all, I'd like to welcome both of you gentlemen to ThePrint. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jyoti.
Mr. Saran, may I start with you and ask you the significance of Prime Minister Hasina's visit to India? This is the 13th time that she and Prime Minister Modi have met. But what is so special anyway about Bangladesh that both leaders are meeting so frequently? What's the significance of her visit?
Well, I think Bangladesh is actually, the relationship with Bangladesh has emerged as one of the most successful relationships India has had with any neighbor in the subcontinent. And the kind of progress that we have seen is extraordinary. Secondly, I think it's good that she's visiting after a bit of a gap. The last time she visited was in 2019. And one of the strengths of this relationship has been the ability of the two leaders to meet regularly, whether in Delhi or Dhaka or in third capitals, at a regular interval. So because of the COVID pandemic, there was a hiatus, although Prime Minister Modi visited last year, and the president also visited. But for her, it's a visit after 3 years. So that's, I think, the significance.
Mr. Haque, may I ask you, you're right here in Delhi. You have the privilege of being the first Bangabandhu Chair. Bangladesh is celebrating 100 years of Bangabandhu's birth. And of course, you have just celebrated, or you are celebrating still 50 years of your own independence. Now, there have been several agreements signed during this visit between India and Bangladesh. Amongst them, the most interesting is, I think, the water sharing on the Kushiara River, which is one of 54 trans-boundary rivers between India and Bangladesh. But the Teesta Accord, which has been hanging fire for so many years, you were Foreign Secretary at the time when former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister in India. There has been talk on the Teesta waters sharing, but nothing has happened. Why do you think?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I think, we have 54 common rivers. So you can see the breadth of the water issues between the two countries. On the Teesta, I think it is more of an internal issue for India rather than a bilateral issue, because there is an agreement which has been actually initialed, as we call it in our diplomatic parlance, before it gets signed in 2011. It was ready for signing, but because of your internal complications, particularly an issue raised by West Bengal government, it couldn't went through, and still it is in limbo. And that has also created a lot of frustrations because there was a huge expectations that after Ganga Treaty signed in 1996, this will be the second kind of a breakthrough, and then eventually we will go into all kinds of agreements. So certainly that's not the case. But one positive thing, let me also tell you, that whole Kushiara thing, I think, has brought about a sense that, yes, Teesta we need, it has to be signed, it has to be implemented, but there are other 54 rivers that we should also look at, not only in terms of distributing water, but also better utilization of that and management in terms of pollution control and others. So, there are now agreement between the two countries that there will be next 7 group of rivers where we will look into it, and hopefully another 7 that Bangladesh proposed. So we'll be in fact, in the next couple of years, we'll be looking at 14 rivers in terms of not only distribution, but also management, pollution control, and the rest of it. So there are brighter side of the whole issue as well. Thank you.
Mr. Saran, you were High Commissioner in Dhaka when the land boundary agreement was signed. And I'm just trying to say that both India and Bangladesh have been able to resolve some of the most sort of thorniest issues. You know, the land boundary, which is sort of pending from 1975 or 1974, actually. So what is it about the Teesta that you signed the Ganga Waters Accord, you've signed the Kushiara Waters sharing. What is the problem with the Teesta?
You know, the Teesta flows through Sikkim and West Bengal. And there is a serious problem of availability of water in the Teesta. So whenever we talk about sharing and entering into an international agreement, it is incumbent on the center to ensure that both the state governments are on board. This is exactly what you also did at the Ganges Treaty time in 1996. You took the West Bengal government on board. So I think that is one fundamental problem, that we have to recognize that water is now a problem in terms of its availability. And the Teesta represents just that. Secondly, I think it's important that we look at the bigger issues when it comes to the water agenda between India and Bangladesh. And, for example, the Joint Rivers Commission met a few days ago. If you look at the statute and the charter of the JRC, it is really wide-ranging in its scope, and sharing is only one part of it. As Shahid said, there are many, many other aspects to water management between the two countries. So I think because in the Teesta, you're talking about augmentation, you're talking about the construction of a barrage, and there are other elements of a proposed or a possible agreement.
Right.
So these are the basic factors.
So one is that the West Bengal government must be on board. But Mr. Haque, I'd like to draw your attention to something that Prime Minister Hasina said at the, when she met some journalists and others here in Delhi. And she said, as long as Prime Minister Modi is here, I'm not worried about the India-Bangladesh relationship. Now, that's quite interesting, isn't it? I was quite, actually, because she doesn't really know Prime Minister Modi. And of course, they've met 13 times. But it's interesting that she would say something as personal as that.
No, I think it also reflects the width and depth of the relationship between the two countries in general, and also between an understanding of the two leaders. I was there when the two leaders met for the first time in Dhaka. At the time, certainly there were apprehensions and all kinds of things, but it clicked on the first meeting.
What were the apprehensions about?
It was not it's a non-Congress leadership.
That's right.
Because as you know that with the Bangladesh Liberation War, Congress was deeply involved. There was a lot of interactions. They knew each other, even to the family level. I'm talking about the Congress and Awami League. So it was a non-Congress government, and there was not much of an interactions at that level. So that also was, sort of a fear of unknown, if I can quote it. But good to see that over the years it's disappeared. There's a very good understanding between the two leaders, which I have witnessed personally on many, many occasions. In fact, out of the 13 meetings, I think I was present in 10. so that's and I think it's a very genuine expression of our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, that this is a person whom Bangladesh enjoys a good relationship. And also I think over the years, it's not only land boundary agreement, but the other issues where we have seen that this government, BJP-led government of India, has delivered in terms of expectation. Not that everything has been achieved, but many, many things have been achieved, which somehow or other we did not see before 2014. Let me put it in this way.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, Mr. Haque, because in the former, you're absolutely right. I think the relationship between the former Congress party and the Awami League was quite strong. So in a sense, Mr. Saran, isn't it interesting that the BJP has been able to overcome that? Of course, Prime Minister Modi, legitimately, fairly elected prime minister, but he's made an effort, hasn't he, to reach out to Bangladesh and to create the special relationship.
Yeah, I mean, without doubt, I think the kind of pace and the momentum and the sweep of the relationship from 2014 till today is actually extraordinary. And the land boundary agreement symbolizes it like nothing else, because you were able to solve a problem which was 70 years old and which seemed completely unsolvable. So the fact that this government or Prime Minister Modi resolved it within a year of coming to power, by taking all the state governments on board, by amending the Indian constitution, there was so much done. And so it was an exhibition of political will and a very, very strong signal to Bangladesh, not just the leadership of Bangladesh, but the people of Bangladesh, that this government of the BJP under the Prime Minister not only has the will, but has the ability to do whatever it takes to resolve issues which were inherited from the past because of various inadequacies and other reasons why previous governments could not solve it. So I think, and then that is resolving these legacy issues. But when you look at the more current and forward-looking issues, and we can discuss those, I think the progress has been extraordinary.
And
could I just add?
Yes, sure.
On the land boundary thing, I think Pankaj has been on the spot on this. But also, let me flag that just because of that, about 31,000 people, stateless people actually, on both sides were given the citizenship. It's a big achievement. Often we fail to appreciate that. Just because there was an agreement, 31,000 people got the citizenship, both sides, India and Bangladesh.
But I would also like to say here that actually the work for the land boundary agreement was done during former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's time. The ratification did take place, and this is not to take credit away from the Modi government at all, because in a sense, as the successor government, you did go forward with the relationship between India and Bangladesh, and I think that's I think quite remarkable. But I have a question to both of you, and if I can ask you, Mr. Saran, first. There have been some comments that leaders in the Modi government have made about Bangladesh, and I'm referring to Home Minister Amit Shah's comment about Bangladeshi infiltrators, and he used the word termites. And that went down very badly in Bangladesh. But why do you think that something like this had to be said?
Look, I think we should let bygones be bygones in this case, because a lot of what is said, either in India or in Bangladesh, is actually said in the context of domestic politics, local elections, etc. So these are not meant to be foreign policy statements. So I think we have to be very clear on that. And number two, the most important thing is that illegal migration is a problem and is recognized by Bangladesh, by India. So it is something as friends we have to talk about. And we have talked about it. It's not a new item on the agenda. So I would just leave it at that, because after that, if you look at the movement in the relationship, it is completely disproportionate to the importance that has been given to this one particular remark. Because if you were to treat that remark as defining this government's approach to Bangladesh, then you would not have had the 100 other things that have happened, which would have been unthinkable a few years ago.
Mr. Haque, would you agree?
Yes, I fully agree with with Pankaj on this. And let me also tell you, I was visited the Guwahati and Assam and Meghalaya last month, and have been talking and meeting people. It's a 4 days kind of a interaction, and I see that both at the state government level and the people level, there's a new understanding and new narrative that's coming out of Assam and Meghalaya, that let's try and build a new relationship. They know that without Bangladesh's active help, that region will continue to suffer because of lack of connectivity, and that they are actually looking towards a much better, stronger relationship and connectivity. I'm sure that we'll have a discussion with Bangladesh.
Yeah, so that's my next question, Mr. Saran. There's a lot of talk about connectivity. I've written about it myself, how this attempt to sort of integrate both nations, economically integrate, of course, there's no question of the violation of anyone's sovereignty and territorial integrity. But what is fascinating, and Mr. Saran, can you talk about this a little bit? What does this mean, this crisscrossing of roads, of railway tracks, of the transit that Bangladesh has allowed Indian goods? Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, it's a huge topic, and I think you can write a book on it, or maybe more than one book on it, because the level of ambition on both sides sometimes baffles you. And I will just, we can talk about it endlessly, but I will just say, for example, that in the last 1 or 2 years, about 2.5 million Bangladeshis have visited India on visas for tourism or for medical, etc. This would never have happened in the past. So people to people, physical connectivity, the Prime Minister Hasina's vision of restoring the pre-1965 rail links, the road connectivities.
What is the significance of that, Mr. Saran? This restoration of the pre-1965, rail links, road links. What is this all about?
It's very significant because what she's basically saying is that when it was East Pakistan, the West Pakistanis, the Islamabad setup, they artificially cut off the natural linkages between India and Bangladesh. And she says, as the Prime Minister, I do not agree with what the West Pakistanis did. And I am today a sovereign nation, and I shall reopen everything which existed before 1965. And so I am not a party to the India-Pakistan conflict of 1965. So it's a great assertion of Bangladesh's sovereignty and the belief that a well-connected Bangladesh is a prosperous Bangladesh. And then, we talk about...
That's really incredible, isn't it? I mean, this sentiment that she's expressing, that she's not party to what happened in 1965, and then she wants to restore or help restore, pave the way for the restoration of these connectivities. Mr. Haque, I mean, that's basically what you're saying, is that you're really reconnecting or reintegrating the whole of the Northeast. So Bangladesh, India's Northeast. What does this mean for Bangladesh?
Thank you very much. I fully agree with Pankaj on the whole issue of how do we connect or reconnect the region. If you look at the map, it's just in between the Northeast and the rest of the region. So without Bangladesh being actively engaged, that economy cannot be an integrated, functional economy, and that used to be, and it was a very thriving economy. Actually, Bengal and Punjab was the two regions which produced most of the GDPs in those days for the Indian subcontinent. So that's the context. But I fully agree, and but the one issue that I want to also flag here, that it is more than business, it's more than connectivity, it is the people. Because when you go to, say, Meghalaya or Assam or Tripura for that matter, you will see that they feel very associated, both ends of the border, because the families are across the border, they know each other. That's why I was standing in the border, and I see the flow of people coming from Bangladesh and going from this year to visit relatives, to visit places, which wasn't there.
No, are you saying that the roads are being opened up, that visas are being streamlined and smoothened? Is that what's going on?
Absolutely. It's a further improvement of the roads, but whatever is there, that's why you have 2 million visas issued, and most of the people actually come by road through this border area.
Mr. Saran, are you saying that India is opening up visas for Bangladeshis even in the neighboring states of, say, Tripura, Assam, Meghalaya? Is that what's going on?
No, I mean, the visa is an Indian visa. Once you get the visa, you can travel any part of India. And like Shahid is saying, 70% of the travel is through the land. It's only 30% which is through rail and air. So actually, when you do this kind of thing, you're helping the people on the ground. And, if you visit the bordering regions, which I have done a lot, you look at the density, the poverty, the linkages, it's a whole economy out there. And this is what was disrupted in 1965 by the Pakistanis as an artificial barrier between what were natural linkages. So even things like border hearts, smaller roads, land custom stations, integrated checkposts, I mean, you name it. And today we are actually moving to other very nice forms of connectivity, which we can talk. I mean, waterways and all that. But it's all happening. And then we can even talk about the trade aspect, which is a part of the integrative process.
So, Mr. Haque, I have a question for you. Why is Sheikh Hasina doing this? Why didn't her predecessors, and I'm not talking about the military dictatorships of Ershad and the others, but her immediate predecessor, the BNP chairman now, Khaleda Zia, why isn't that they talked about this? After all, it was there for the taking. So what is it about Hasina that makes her think that you need this kind of integration and connectivity?
I think it's more of a political understanding of the political parties of Bangladesh. I think Awami League, which is currently run by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, was led by her father. And, if you look at some of the statements of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in 1972 and 73, and the things that were happening in those days till his unfortunate bloody assassination, you'll see that he was setting a kind of a trajectory where Bangladesh would actually be more linked with India. And if you look at some of his speeches before 1970 election, including the manifesto of Awami League pre-election, 1970 election, which you'll see that he actually in that said that, and I want to have friendship with all, in particular the neighboring countries. So that he was coming out very clear even during the elections that we are not going to follow the Pakistani policy if I'm elected as the Prime Minister of United Pakistan, which he thought. So that Bangabandhu was very clear in terms of linking up the region. So it's a continuation of that policy politically, I see. Now, when the military government took over, certainly their political orientation was different, and we all know that. It's now documented, including things that happening in the bordering area, which wasn't expected. So it was a different direction that they were trying to take Bangladesh to. But eventually, people of Bangladesh look towards the neighboring countries, for everything,
right.
Including the essential commodities, the treatment, the education, and it's both way actually, because we have to understand that still there are people who knew how it looked when the whole continent was united. So it's still there, and historically it's get related to their next third, fourth generation, and the new generation that they're in Bangladesh, they don't have these inhibitions that it is India, we can't do anything. So they are more open, and they said, we go around and mix. They're
Right.
more open, globalized people than us, who are kind of our mindset is border centric.
But Mr. Saran, what is in it for India? This Akhara-Agartala rail link that is being talked about. Agartala in India, of course, the capital of Tripura. We have Akhara, which is just across the border. It's not a very big rail link. But what is the significance of something like this and the others for India? What does it mean for India?
The idea, as Shahid rightly said, that you can actually cross borders with ease, and it should not be a kind of a odyssey or a expedition to travel say 30 kilometers or 50 kilometers. The fact is, from the border to Agartala you can go by rickshaw, so it's actually that close. But when you build a train, what you're saying is you can potentially in the future, depending on how things go with Bangladeshi consent, even look at the possibility of travel between Kolkata, cutting through Bangladesh to Tripura. Of course, keep in mind, Tripura's population is just 3 million, I think, or probably less. So its usage, the demand, the market is tiny compared to Bangladesh. But even it's an enclave, literally completely landlocked. And therefore, anything we can do to facilitate commerce and trade, visits to hospitals, dispensaries, essential commodities, all this is part and parcel of going back to a norm which in fact exists between all friendly nations in the world, whether it's China and Vietnam, for example, or the United States and Canada. So, these are normal things that normal nations do. And therefore, the more you have, because, now you're multiplying your rail links. You had them originally only from, say, Dhaka. Now you're having them from Khulna. So, all this is happening. And all the credit has to be given to the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her conviction, and we are very happy to participate in this venture, because the more it happens, the more there will be normalcy in the relationship, and the more it will benefit the people. So this is a case actually of foreign policy which is rooted firmly in the ground. It is not an abstract conceptualized framework that you discuss in air-conditioned rooms. It's actually people who are at stake here.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I was just reading that just 10 days or so ago, there were these 10 oil tankers that exited from Meghalaya, from the Dauki land port at Meghalaya, came into Bangladesh and then exited into Tripura. I mean, that's fascinating, isn't it? That you could have potentially something like this happening at a much grander scale.
I have to interject in this because I have traveled through the Meghalaya Bangladesh trading point, and from Meghalaya they were exporting boulders from Meghalaya mountains. The boulders were being crushed in Bangladesh, and the crushed boulders were then being re-exported to Tripura. So this is the nature of the local economy.
In a sense, actually, it's the people of the two countries, or at least of those parts, that have forced the diplomats in Delhi and Dhaka to do this. Mr. Haque?
Absolutely. People are always ahead of us. Just flag. There was a discussion day before yesterday in Dhaka, a talk, and somebody in the meeting says that, why are we talking about this railroad and that railroad? Shouldn't we think of a high-speed rail connecting Dhaka and Delhi?
Right.
I thought it was a brilliant idea. Time has come for that, given our experience in Europe and other places. So I think the future is very bright, provided we continue to enjoy the stability of the region, the political stability, and we don't go back to an era where things are sort of reversed. It has happened in the past, so let's hope for the best.
So we're talking about political stability. Elections in India are some time away. And I'm going to ask Mr. Saran, since you've lived in Dhaka and you're half Bangladeshi, I'm sure, which is that elections in Bangladesh are going to take place next year. Now, for the previous two times, the opposition BNP did not participate in the elections. I would hope that now that you are not the Deputy National Security Advisor, you will explain to the viewers of ThePrint what is in it for Bangladesh. Why is it that it's important for the opposition to also participate? Mr.
Look, every country has its own genius. You really cannot impose your political kind of structures on others. So it's a decision that has to be taken by all the parties in Bangladesh. The BNP has been in existence, for the last maybe 40 years or so. So they are no babes in the wood. They know exactly the lay of the land. Their leaders are well known to the people in Bangladesh. They are not strangers in their own country. So the decision on whether to participate or not has to be left to the BNP and to the other political parties. And this is something which, we wouldn't like it if someone were to tell India or some political party in India that you must do A or B or C. We would resent it. So I would say that we leave it to the BNP. Obviously, Bangladesh is a democracy in the sense that it has had elections, it has a parliament, it has all the other features of a democracy. Now, how it functions, whether you give it 10 out of 10 or you give it 8 out of 10 or 5 out of 10 is a different issue. But the fact is that there are political parties, they are recognized, they are registered, they're legal, and then it's up to them. Whether they want to or do not want to participate. And as far as we are concerned, any verdict of the people is something we will have no choice but to respect. It's a kind of a obvious thing to say, actually.
Yeah, I'm actually fascinated by the fact I was in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, a couple of months ago, about 6 weeks ago, and it was really interesting to see how the government has been able to control the radical elements. And I'm talking about both the Jamaat-e-Islami as well as other terror outfits. So, Mr. Haque, I want to ask you, even when you have these, the Holy Artisan Bakery attack, for example, I mean, that is 2014, 2016, 6 years ago. But how is it? What has this government done? What has Hasina's government done where you've been able to, or where she's been able to control the terror radical elements in the society?
It wasn't easy to start with. It was very difficult. And you reminded us of 2014 when things were pretty flat. But the government and the people, I think, have jointly decided that enough is enough. We are not going to go back to any kind of an anarchy. And we fought based on the secular values of 1971, and we're going to hold on, especially the younger generation. So in most of the information that the government received about these terror groups were by simple people. People called up and said, there's something happening in my next door. Can you come and see? So those kinds of things. So it was a very grassroots understanding of the people that we need stability. We don't need anarchy. Yes, we all, a majority of the people are Muslim. That does not mean that we have to go into a jihad right now. So it was more of a people's kind of a outlook towards the radicalizations that help. Still, there are elements. When we had our War of Liberation in 1971, about 2% of the population did not believe in it, actually. So those people are still around, and I'm sure they still hope that something miracle will happen, but I think their desire will continue to be disappointing for the nation. But it was something that we all jointly, the government, the people did it, especially the younger population. We saw that how the demonstration came out after the 2014 and said that, enough is enough. We don't want to go back to the pre-independence time. And 71 is our rallying point, and the values we hold on to it. There are hiccups here and there, and time to time we see that some groups are trying to do things which is extremely disturbing for the people and the government.
Talk about the Jamaat-e-Islami.
Absolutely, Jamaat-e-Islami, Hifazat, and all kinds of things. But I think overall things are under control, and I wouldn't be too concerned right now, because the people want stability, peace, and a democratic society, and most of the secular values that they aspire. So
that's actually really fascinating, isn't it, Mr. Saran, that the people, I mean, that the people of Bangladesh do not, or they are the ones who are rejecting these radical elements. So whether it's the Jamaat-e-Islami, which has been an ally of the BNP earlier, or the Hifazat, or these other radical elements, I mean, they are there very much, but it's the government that's controlling them, in a sense, backed by the people.
No question about it. I mean, I think the way in which Prime Minister Hasina, from the first day of her election and coming to power, has chosen to correct historical wrongs and to bring the perpetrators to justice of the massacres and atrocities, and to revive the entire spirit of 1971, which led to the creation of Bangladesh, which was actually forgotten. And there were people there who deliberately wanted to push it under the carpet or even to reverse the decision. I think so for her, it's been a really, really a very important and a very bold journey to correct these wrongs and to put Bangladesh back on the track as an independent, sovereign, proud nation. And this is what she's doing. And as Shahid rightly said, yes, it is an Islamic country. There is no doubt about it. I mean, that's what Bangladesh is. But its identity goes well beyond its religious character. So the fact that today you have the vast majority of the youth who were born Bangladeshi, they were not born Pakistani. So if you have a 30-year-old or a 20-year-old, he is a Bangladeshi. And therefore, what the government and the institutions are doing is to they are in the process of building this identity. And this is where India can help if it is possible. But this is a real work in progress. And the whole question of the role of the radical parties or the extremists is something which Bangladesh has to sort out. But as far as I can make out, the mainstream view is not reflected in their activities. But we have to be careful because there is a youth bulge. You have to look at problems of unemployment, education. So all these are important challenges.
Yeah. So the question is, Mr. Haque, is that you have still war criminals. We know that some of them were hanged in the previous term when Prime Minister Hasina was Prime Minister. But there are still people at large, some war criminals, both from 1971, as well as the assassins of Bangabandhu from 1975. They are still at large. There are some reports that some are in Pakistan, in Lahore, and elsewhere in the world, maybe even in Canada or elsewhere. Tell us a little bit about that. What's the latest?
Good. Thank you very much. I think if you talk about the people who were involved in the genocide of 1971, who supported the genocidal forces of Pakistan in 1971, yes, we have been successful in bringing some of them to the justice, but not all of them, because they are out of Bangladesh. Some are hiding in various places. In fact, some of them are taking citizenship of UK, USA, naturally Pakistan, and some of the other countries, and so that's there. But also those who are inside the country, the government is currently going ahead with the process of bringing them under justice. So that's something. But there are also, disgruntled some of the military officers who assassinated our father of the nation in 1975, along with the whole family of the member, except the two daughters of Bangabandhu who were outside the country in those days. So that some of them are hiding in Pakistan and some of the other countries. We have information. We are also trying to bring them back. At least one known who is in United States. The other one is in Canada. They have been given shelter by those countries. We have been pursuing for a couple of years to bring them back, but not been successful as yet. But the process is on, and thanks to India, because lately we have been successful in getting some of them to the justice that they deserve. So yes, that's there, and that's also create. They are also linked with the radical element that we just talked about a few minutes back. So it's a network. The fight goes on, and the government and the people of Bangladesh are ready to give a fight to bring justice to a home, because there are still people who remembers the horror of those days. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Saran, your last comments.
No, I think this is an extremely valuable relationship between India and Bangladesh. We have done exceptionally well in the last few years to take it from strength to strength. Its benefits are percolating down to the complete common man, right to the bottom. And we are progressing on the right direction of integrating the economies, of reconnecting ourselves. And if we pursue this, we will be doing great service to just not our people alone, but to the subcontinent, because everyone is watching. The only thing we need here is the political will and the political stability to take this agenda forward. And so I would just say that.
And I just want to add that I think Prime Minister Hasina, an extraordinary person. I mean, she's been through some of the worst tragedies that anybody can go through with her own personal life, her own personal traumas, when her entire family was assassinated, except for her sister in 1975. But thank you both so much, Mr. Pankaj Saran and Mr. Shahidul Haque, for joining me at the Print Debates and discussing the importance of the India-Bangladesh relationship. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Thank you.